Philadelphia, get ready to be inspired. If you need help finding the light in the darkness, don't touch that dial. Let's navigate life through the lens of hope with Scotty P. Inspirational speaker Scotty P speaks the importance of mental health in society and encourages techniques to overcome the everyday mental health obstacles that hold us back in life. It's not just inspiration, it's Scotty P Inspiration.
And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Scotty P Inspiration Show with your host here, Scotty P, a.k.a. Scott Prendergast. Thank you so much for joining me on another Friday here. Thank you for starting your weekend with me so that I can help you to navigate your life through the lens of hope and help you to rediscover that resilience that lies within you already. So, happy Friday, everybody, as we do here. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm really excited for this message, and I think that with season 2 here, and the episode 2 now of season 2, there's going to be even greater things that you're going to be able to take from this, so I'm super excited today. Now, before we dive into it, because you know I like to just go, some business real quick. If you want to watch any of the past episodes, first episode of season 2, all of season 1, a couple ways you could do it. You could go on www.dbam.com. You could search the show, Scotty P Inspiration Show, watch it that way. You can also go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any major podcast platform, search the show, watch it that way. Or you could go on my YouTube channel, that's Scotty P Inspiration, it's just Scotty P Inspiration, yes, correct. And you can search the show that way as well, and you can watch it with the video too. All right, everybody. So thanks for being here today. Without further ado, we are going to get started. If you're new to watching and listening to my show, I always like to start with a quote to get things rolling, kind of get it cooking a little bit, and then we take it from there and base the topic kind of off of that quote. All right? So the quote for today is as follows. It's a simple one. It says, insecurities are what eat away at the unique fabric of the soul. I want to say that one again. Insecurities are what eat away at the unique fabric of the soul. Now, this is from somebody you may know. His name is Scott Prendergast. This is something that I said one time during a conference, and I had a lot of people comment on it and said they liked it, so that's a quote from me. So what we're talking about today is insecurities and how to really overcome them. Now, when we say insecurities, that's something that makes everybody kind of go, because everybody has them, whether they want to admit it or not, or realize it or not. But insecurities drive a lot of the actions that we take and a lot of things that we do in this life, unfortunately. So if that's an inevitable thing, how can we see that, acknowledge it, but also have ourselves work through it so that we don't become a puppet to these insecurities, right? So when I was thinking about this today and coming up with a message, I thought of this. I realized that a lot of the insecurities that we all have kind of stem from interpretations of ourselves and interpretations of different events that have taken place throughout our lives, right? It's not like an insecurity has to be one thing and it's the same thing for everybody. No, actually, they're quite unique for every individual person. And what some person struggles with insecurity-wise, somebody else might view that as a strength for them, right? They're different for everybody. But regardless, a lot of them come from the fact that we're interpreting an event that happened, or we're interpreting something about ourselves in a certain way that therefore we view as an insecurity. Now, I know this is important because we have to understand the origin of this stuff. Because like many things in life, if we don't understand the origin, where we begin, where it's starting, where it's coming from, how can we make sure that we can make the necessary changes to see a different outcome, a different future, rather than repeating the past mistakes or past situation, right? So when we realize that, okay, I may be insecure about this area of my life or that area of my life, and it's coming from this, that really helps us to take that first step towards overcoming it. And I don't want to say beating the insecurity, but learning to manage it and learning to slowly chip away at it. That, I think, is a really good visual for us to think about. Because if we go throughout our lives, there's going to be so many insecurities and say, okay, I got to get rid of this one. I got to get rid of that one. I got to get rid of that one, that one, that one, that one. That's an overwhelming thought process. And you know what that's probably going to lead to? It's going to lead to us being so overwhelmed that we don't even take any action on trying to change anything. Because we figure, oh, this is too big of a mountain. This is too much for me to do. I can't do this. So what's the point? So I'll just stay stuck in it anyways, right? I think this happens a lot. So instead of trying to view it that way, we got to say, how do I slowly chip away at this insecurity bit by bit, day by day, hour by hour, week by week, whatever it is, until you get to a point where it's no longer controlling the actions that you take. No longer controlling the actions that you take. And to kind of go off of this thread a little bit, because I think there's a lot there, How many of you, and obviously you're not going to say it, but I want you to think about it as you're listening to this. I want you to think about how many times you've allowed an insecurity about yourself in your life completely take the reins of your life and result in you taking an action or doing something only because of that insecurity. I want you to think about that. I want you to genuinely think, when was the last time, how many times have I allowed an insecurity to control an action that I've taken in my life? Now, regardless of who you are, the answer to that is inevitably going to be yes, and it's up to you to think about what that experience is. But the reason I want you to think about this and know this is because I want you to identify that it has happened. And by identifying that it has happened, that's going to slowly plant a little bit of a seed in your mind to be a little bit aware the next time it might try to come about. And the next time where it comes about, all of a sudden you say, wait a minute, this is that insecurity playing me again. All of a sudden now we become a little self-aware. And if you've listened to this show before, so much of what I talk about is learning to become self-aware so we can identify this stuff and then make the changes that are necessary. But what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, when was the last time this happened? Has it happened? And the answer is yes and yes to both of them, and probably recently for both of them. And that way we're planting that seed. We're planting that seed to learn to become somewhat aware of this. And that is super extremely important because it's step one in overcoming it, okay? Now, as we move forward here for this first segment, something else that I had written down was, based off of what I was saying before, the interpretation, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll have a specific memory in mind, right? It won't even just be a specific, in my teenage years or middle school years. It'll be a specific memory of when Joey B said this to me in third grade or whatever. Whatever it is, different for all of us, but we have this specific memory and we tend to lose perspective because of it. Now, this specific memory, we may say that's the memory that made me insecure about my height or my weight or the way I talk or how I look. It's that memory that did it for me. And it was that thing right there that was the catalyst that led me down to 20 plus years of being insecure about this or that. And a lot of times we have a tendency to do this. We pinpoint not that it happened, but rather one specific thing, and we dump everything onto that one event, that one thing from our past, and say, that's the reason we deal with this. I understand this. I've done this in my life as well, and I've talked about this with a lot of people I work with and speak with who have done it too, and I get it, and I understand it. I'm not devalidating it. Because the fact is that memory, whatever it is, played a role in it, yes. But that is not the only reason. That is not the responsible thing, that one event that happened for you dealing with 20 years of this insecurity, right? And we need to understand that and realize that and say, okay, look, I can't lose perspective and say everything happened because of this one thing. Because then you know what happens with that? When we look at life that way, when we look at that experience that way, all of a sudden we think, wow, my life's always been this way. I've always dealt with this problem. So my future is always going to be repeating this problem. Because we're focusing on our past and forgetting about the present, and therefore the future is just going to be on loop. And that's something right there that is a pretty sad way to live, and it's unfortunate. And we got to break that cycle, right? And a good way to start breaking that is to learn to gain some of that perspective and acknowledge these things that have happened. Acknowledge, yes, the third grade incident that happened. Yeah, but don't blame every insecurity and all of the problems you dealt with it on one thing, because that's just not productive. And there's nothing good that's going to come from that. And that's only going to keep us stuck further in that cycle of insecurity rather than helping us to break free from it and separate from it. Okay, so for you, listener, I want you to think about that in your own life, in your own situation. And remember that and start to apply that concept I just shared with you there to that. Now, as we roll forward here a little bit more, as I'm talking about this and I'm thinking more about insecurities and how they play such a huge role in our everyday lives and how they control so many things that we do, I'm tempted to think about this. I think about all the things we could have done, all the things that people could have done, all the different things that could have been changed in this world had we taken action on it instead of let our insecurities tell us that we couldn't. And I talk a lot about negative self-talk and self-doubt. That's a big part of the Scotty P Inspiration brand. And self-doubt and negative self-talk is huge when it comes to insecurities. Because an insecurity will be there, and then all of a sudden we just harp on it and obsess over it, and that negative self-talk becomes more loud and louder and louder and louder. And when negative self-talk gets really loud, its favorite weapon, so to speak, against us is stagnation. And when we have this negative self-talk so loud, we don't take the time to step out into the new unknown areas, so to speak. We don't take the time to try something new or do something we haven't done before because that self-talk is so incredibly loud and damning, so to speak, that we're just like, oh my goodness, I guess I really can't do this anyways because I'm this or because I think I'm that. And then this leads to us, again, just like I've said before, being stuck within the insecurities rather than chipping away at them and living our lives not by the insecurity standard, but by our own standard, right? Now, all of this really, it takes a lot of reflection. It takes a lot of reflection to start to learn some of this, to understand some of this. But for you, the listener today, I want you to really, really grasp on the fact and the idea, and the whole message of this show is realizing that you can overcome these insecurities, but it starts with understanding what they are, and it also starts with making sure that you're going to take a step towards overcoming it through going through it, if that makes sense. So we want to go through the insecurity. We don't want to ignore it. We don't want to say it's not there. We want to go through it completely. So it's like we shatter that brick wall, that insecurity, instead of just trying to cover it up and bury it with some leaves and say, oh, well, I guess it's not there. Okay, I think we can all see that, right? Now, that's something I really want you to be able to get from this message today. And in the second part of the show, we're going to talk more about specific strategies we can do to kind of help us with this. Because, you know, my second part of the show, I love to really get into the nitty-gritty with that, as the first part's more introductory. So with the few minutes that we have before we go to break here, to kind of set us up for the second part, one of the things that I was thinking about and I wrote down was kind of as followed. Thinking about the idea that we allow the pain and insecurity that are in our lives, they stem from somewhere else too. And a lot of times what will happen is we go throughout this world and we go throughout our day, we meet people who are just mean and people just project their own anger and insecurities and sadness onto us. You know, by them saying a nasty comment, they're projecting all the hatred, projecting all the insecurities that they have onto us. And a lot of times what happens is we take that and we allow it to create little nests within us, so to speak. Like imagine like little bird nests of insecurities all throughout our souls. And we allow this in because we take it personally, because we take it to heart, because somebody else is projecting their insecurities onto us. And we accept that. And what happens is when these little nests, so to speak, that I call them, of insecurities from others get into us, it creates even more negative self-talk, even more self-doubt, even more evidence, so to speak, to the brain that you are this or you are that. And it starts to spread all over to the point where it really paralyzes us from learning to work through it, right? Because we accept those lies that are being told to us by ourselves, but they are coming from the projections of somebody else's insecurities that they placed on us. I know that was a lot right there to think of, but we'll say that again and kind of break it down. The insecurities that other people may have through their actions and being nasty and mean and conniving towards you, they're projecting those insecurities onto us. And when they do that, those insecurities have a tendency to create little homes, little nests inside of us. And those homes and nests turn into spreading lies to us that we start to accept about ourselves. Even though it's not true, it's a lie, but because it was projected onto us, we think it's true. All right, so what I want you to understand today, too, is that when we have these people who say these things and project this stuff onto us, remember what I talked about last week on the episode. Learn to put up that filter, right? Filter through, okay, this is coming from them. This does not mean it's true. I'm going to filter this and not going to allow this to become the center focal point of my day. Right? We got to learn to filter this stuff out so that way we're not just sitting there and being completely crushed and destroyed from other people's projections onto us, right? And that is something that I really want you, the listener, to take a hold of for this episode today because it's super important. Now, we've got so much more to talk about. Love the second part of the show is coming up in a second. Don't go anywhere, everyone. We'll be right back after these quick commercial breaks.
Hey everyone, Eric Katz here, the owner of Katz Dogs Canine. Are you working from home and need to get your dog out running around for the day? Will you be traveling this summer and looking for a place to board your pup? Is your dog looking a little shaggy and need a haircut or bath? Are you looking forward to walking around and enjoying this beautiful weather, but you can't because your dog's pulling like a freight train? Well, you're in luck. We are a one-stop shop that focuses on daycare, boarding, grooming, and training. We are located at 35 Middle Road, Percy, PA, on 10 beautiful acres. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at CatsDogsCanine or our website, catsdogscanine.com. Our phone number is 855-CATS-DOG, 855-528-9364.
What's going on, everyone? This is Scott Prendergast here, aka Scotty P. Real quick, I want to talk to you about my business. It's called Scotty P Inspiration. And what I am is I'm an inspirational speaker, and I want to help others navigate life through the lens of hope. Now, I do this through speaking engagements, but also one-on-one life coaching. So if you're interested in booking me or doing some of that coaching, let me know. Check me out at www.scottypinspiration.com or check out my Instagram at ScottyP_inspo. Find Yourself Boxes was created to foster the connection between a person and those in life who may be working through mental health challenges by providing curated and customizable boxes filled with research-backed wellness products that promote healing. Coupling personal experience with professional mental health guidance, Find Yourself Boxes meets people where they are on their journey. Wellness doesn't look the same for every person, and these products are packaged together to touch various aspects of our wellness spectrum. Find your healing with Find Yourself Boxes at findyourselfboxes.com, and you can get 20% off your first purchase. And welcome back, everybody, to the Scotty P Inspiration Show today. Thank you for joining me on this Friday. I am your host, Scotty P, aka Scott Prendergast, and today we are talking all about insecurities and how we can overcome them and identify where they do come from. So thank you for joining us, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us for the second part of the show. And if you want to watch any previous episodes, you could go on www.dbam.com and you can watch them there. You can watch them on any major podcast platform by searching the Scotty P Inspiration Show, or you could go on my YouTube channel, which is Scotty P Inspiration, and you can watch the videos along with the audio on there as well. So everybody, episode 2 of season 2 today, we're talking all about insecurities. And if you're just joining us, the first part of the show, I was kind of talking about where these insecurities come from and how a lot of times it's something that comes from our past and is also projected onto us from other people as well. And we allow that to fester within us, and it becomes a whole other thing, mind of its own. Now, for this part of the show, I want to talk a little bit more about this, but also give some strategies that we can use to work through it. But the first thing that I want to say that builds off of what I was talking about in part 1 is kind of as followed. I think a lot of the judgments that we see in ourselves, that we make about ourselves, or the judgments that, as I said before, are projected onto us, these judgments, they come from insecurities. And anytime there's a harsh level of judgment, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's a lot of insecurity coming from that person in some area or aspect of their life. Now, knowing this, it's not going to solve all of our problems, but I think it helps us to be able to better take the things that are projected onto us with a bit of grain of salt, so to speak. Now, when we see someone just throwing harsh judgments all over the place towards us or towards another person, instead of letting that sting and really, like I said, build those nests within us, I think we can say, okay, I see what's going on here. This person's got a lot of insecurities they're dealing with. And when we realize that and we tell ourselves that, I think in a way, we almost kind of feel bad for that person when we don't let their harsh words or opinions or judgments really take root within us. So if we can look at it and realize that judgments are formulated by the reflections of that person's insecurities, it's going to take some pressure off of us, and it's going to help some of these insecurities and things that people say just kind of go over us and wash over our, I don't want to say wash over our back per se, but we're going to be able to brush it off a little bit easier than maybe we were before. So those judgments, they are truly reflections of insecurities. And I think that's super important to remember and hold on to, and helps us a lot when we're trying to deal with this stuff, especially when it's directed towards us. But to build off of that, as I was coming up with this message, one of the things that I really found to be true when it comes to insecurities is the divisions that come with them. And what I mean by that is really as followed. I think we all put up divisions as human beings as a way to kind of validate our own personal difficult experiences. And we do this all based off of, you guessed it, insecurities. Because somebody may have an insecurity saying that, okay, I'm told by society that what I went through doesn't really matter and it isn't as bad as this person's or that person's, or my struggle isn't validated by all these people. And that creates a division. Right? That puts up a wall between us or between us and somebody else, and it's based off of those insecurities. Because we're trying to seek that validation in some type of way, whatever it is, because of that insecurity that we have about this or about that. And when we put up these divisions, it's kind of like this. I imagine that we're walling ourselves in. Like there's this huge castle with a moat and everything, and we're on the inside of it. And every time that we allow these insecurities to kind of, I guess, formulate into an opinion or a judgment or some type of seeking validation, the walls around us grow a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher. And as these walls grow higher, every insecurity that we put out there comes right back on us. And it's something that we start to struggle with even more, right? And I think that's something that's really powerful. And it's something that's really upsetting because it's like we're doing it to ourselves by putting those divisions up, allowing that insecurity in, and then that insecurity ricocheting back onto us tenfold, right? So I think if we can identify that we're putting up a division and realizing that validation is not going to come from anyone else, it's going to come from within, as I talked about numerous times in different episodes, that's going to help us to really address our own insecurities rather than going around trying to just la-dee-da, get everybody's opinion on this or that just so our insecurity will go away, when ultimately that's really not going to happen, all right? It's not. And at the end of the day, when we're talking about insecurities, no one else can do this for you. You know, I can't do this for you. Your spouse can't do this for you. Your parents, your friends, somebody on social media or TikTok, they can't do it for you. At the end of the day, this is something that you have to learn to battle with on your own and come out the other side successful. And you could take guidance, and that's why I have this business and this brand and this show to help people with it, because I've done it myself too. But at the end of the day, it has to be a decision day in and day out that you're going to fight this, that you're not going to become a puppet to these insecurities, that you're going to make a change in some way in your thought process, in your actions, in your feelings, in what you're doing, so that these insecurities become just one part of you and not the whole entirety of you. Right? Because I think we can all think of, and I know multiple people, and I was this person at one time, who their whole life is just a ball of insecurities. And it dictates every single thing they do and every action they take and every position they go into, just eventually becomes ruin because these insecurities have control over them. And if we're not chipping away at that, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And nobody wants to live a life driven by insecurities. We want to live a life driven by faith and driven by love and driven by empowerment, driven by our dreams and things like that. And we can do that. And you will get there, but the first step is that we've got to deal with these insecurities first. We've got to clear out the weeds, clear out the gutters, so to speak, of all this insecurities, identify it, name it, tame it, chip away at it so that we can start to move through it and see the clear path and live the way that we truly want to based off of some of those good qualities, instead of letting insecurities completely run the show. Now, one of the strategies that I have to really help with this that I think is super incredibly important is inner reflection. And inner reflections help to identify truth. Because so many times when we're reflecting on what we see on the outside or what others have said or what the insecurities tell us, that's not really truth. Okay, it's kind of like a veil, like smoke and mirrors. Like, whoo, okay, you're this, when really you're not. It's the insecurity telling you that, or other people telling you that because of their own insecurities, right? But when we genuinely inner reflect on who we are, the experiences we've had, what's happened to us, and this and that, when we reflect on this stuff, that's when we really find out the truth about who we are. And that's when we get answers that are going to propel us forward in the right direction. Now, inner reflection, though, comes with some discomfort, because when we want to reflect on our past, that can bring up painful memories. Reflecting on the past can bring up difficult experiences that we don't want to deal with anymore. And I get that, and that's okay. And I'm not saying you have to dive in and think about those memories too, but you may have to kind of maneuver around them a little bit, whatever works for you. But what you have to do is you have to reflect on the experiences you've had, who you are, as a way to discover the truth about yourself. And when you discover that truth, that's when you can take that evidence that is that truth and shove it in your insecurity's face and say, no, I'm not this, I'm not that, because I know what I truly am, and it's this, this, this. It's almost like you're having a little bit of a I wouldn't say chess match because I don't think it's that sophisticated. I think it'd be more of a checkers match with your mind. And your mind say, oh, here's my move. You're worthless. You're too much of this. You're too this. You're too that. And then your move has to be right back at that and saying, no, I'm not. I'm actually this, I'm this, and I'm this. Here's the evidence to support that I am right mind and you are wrong. Sounds a little bit weird, like you're going against your own mind. Well, you're not going against your own mind. You're going against the part of your mind that's completely obsessed with insecurities. And you're using your rational mind. So it's your rational mind against your emotional mind. And we've got to see which one we're going to allow to win. And the way that you beat the emotional mind is by getting your rational mind to provide that evidence back to your own self. And that evidence is going to lead to a change in how we really feel, what we say to ourselves. That's going to change how we feel about ourselves. And when we change how we feel about ourselves, guess what? That changes the actions that we're going to take in this life. And then those actions produce results or experiences, which then we take as more evidence. Boom. Which leads to us changing what we say to ourselves. So that's the process, okay? And a lot of this begins with that inner reflection. And I really want you today, before next week and you listen to the show, everybody, I really want you to reflect this week on whatever you feel that you need to overcome when it comes to your insecurities. Reflect on it. Find where this stuff starts to come from. Don't blame it on one thing, like I said, but identify what's going on. Acknowledge it. Let yourself feel that. And then let's start that process of saying, okay, I've had just about enough of this insecurity taking my life and doing what it wants with it. It's time for me to take back this. It's time for me to start becoming who I truly want to be by me first knowing what my truth is. And my truth is not what the insecurity says it is. And holding on to and understanding that, so incredibly important. Now, one of the things that I came up with a while back when I first started this business to kind of help with this was something called the 21-day challenge or the 3-week challenge. Now, what this is about is the idea that the brain, it takes about, they say, usually 21 days of consistent effort to build a new habit, right? And for us, and for what we're talking about today, I could refer this 21-day method to overcoming these insecurities. Now, the 21-day method for insecurities might look like this. And again, it's different for everybody, but the idea is that every day you're going to identify something that you want to change, and you're going to change the way you say it to yourself. And what I mean by that is that maybe every day you tell yourself, oh, I'm too out of shape, or I'm too, my eyes are too much of this or that, whatever it is. You identify what that thing is, and you fight back against it with 3 things that are going to be the opposite of that. 3 ways for you to flip the script, so to speak. 3 ways for you to say, no, I'm not too, this, but instead I am smart, I am worthy, I am whatever, okay? That was a very basic example, but you have to essentially take that bad insecurity, flip it, and instead you put something good towards it, okay? So as we end this today, I want to leave you all with this real quick because I didn't realize that I'm almost out of time. We're going to end with this. Overcoming insecurities in this life is something that is going to be a lifelong battle. Insecurities are not something that are ever going to fully, totally disappear, but insecurities are something that can be dealt with and can be handled. And you can and you will get to a point in your life where insecurities don't completely drive the car, but rather they become a passenger seat. And the process of going about doing that takes self-reflection, it takes some time, it takes some energy, it takes some work. But what you need to understand today is that these insecurities, they're past due. It's time to let them go. It's time to dig in within yourself and find that truth about who you are and learn to chip away at those insecurities and let them fall to the side because they are not who you are. And that's important to know. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for another episode. This is Scotty P signing off. Have a good one.